Hey, welcome to Hear Us Out. I'm Paul,
And I'm Patrick.
and today we're going to be well, happy to have you back, Patrick. Happy to be back. I know that we've
Eh,
had 2 weeks of essentially recorded material and stuff like that, so happy to be
we
back
are
live.
live. Anybody out there, get yourself in the chat, ask us a question about what happened today in the world. We can tell you,
Yeah,
as long as it was in the entertainment world.
we'll hold up a newspaper and everything, so you know that we're okay. Um, So today, Patrick, we're going to be talking about Apple TV and Netflix. If you haven't seen our streaming wars material before, we've got them in our back catalog. We're big advocates of kind of the streaming services and streaming wars, items. Today, we're going to be talking about Apple TV. Is it the new Netflix? Which should be a very interesting topic, and a lot of
Yeah,
different places to go.
there is, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it, Paul, because I personally I have been very rough and very hard on Apple since we started covering the streaming services way back, 4 years ago,
Hmm.
and since then Disney Plus, Max, Paramount, everybody's got in. And along the way, I was poking fun at Apple TV Plus because they've been there and they're not really, they weren't ever really gaining the traction I thought they should. But now I'm starting to realize that they had the slow burn approach and that slow burn approach has a lot of big advantages. And I think that as we talk about this is going to come through that they're maybe doing what Netflix once did, but in a smarter and maybe a higher quality way than Netflix were able to maintain. So, Paul, I'm really looking forward. This was an idea of yours that I was like, yes, I really want to talk to that man about this subject because I still don't have Apple TV Plus, but I am considering cutting a streaming service, and it's only to be replaced by Apple TV Plus.
Well, that's the thing. When we first talked about Apple TV, yeah, as you said, it's about 4 years ago. The biggest problem that we had was the fact is that the only way we got it was essentially to have an Apple device. It was to enter their ecosystem or to get a certain deal with with a phone provider, a service provider here in Europe. Like, so that's very locked off. We were talking about it when it was Tom Hanks's Greyhound kind of movie that I really wanted to watch.
Yeah.
Um, like that seemed at the time seemed like a really bad. Now their ecosystem hasn't overly changed, kind of thing, but their movie wasn't great when I did watch it eventually, but like ever since then they've been really powerhousing through some content and stuff like that. So this is where it's coming from, which is so as you can see, which is Netflix and Apple TV Plus is then their new kind of like logo kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Just to clear this up for anybody, there's Apple TV, which is a physical device, which and that's one of the things I really hate Apple for having ever done. That they had a device called Apple TV and then a service called Apple TV Plus. What a pain in the ass to try and make that clear to everybody that you're talking about the service, not the box. So we're talking about the streaming service, not the physical box.
yeah, so the streaming service, yeah, cool. So we'll go through some numbers which should set up a kind of like the foundation. Not to mention a pun or a TV show that we'll be talking about later, but estimated subscribers, which goes so Netflix obviously has the big boy of 228 million subscribers, which goes Prime coming in a very close and reputable 200, Disney coming in 146, and Disney or which goes sorry Apple TV Plus is coming in at 40 million. So not even like 5 times their subscriber count, which is Netflix has.
It does, like, that's one of those things that you're thinking, oh well, look, Apple. Of course, you were making jokes about Apple TV Plus. 40 million subscribers versus nearly 250 million for the top guys. Think about it this way: Netflix's entire business is being a streaming service. Apple TV Plus is a subsidiary of something else that started up, and like you said, it was tied to devices, etc., etc. Subscribers, I don't think tells us the whole story. It gives us one hint in one direction, but I think this is a nice setup for where we're going to be able to go on and talk about why and how Apple have been able to approach things differently that have resulted in maybe less pressure and better quality from a management board point of view.
Yeah, like, which is one of our pop culture. Thank you very much for joining us, and Brian Brew also enjoy the content and welcome to the show. Pop culture also said Prime membership is also a bit wonky because you get it with the subscription of Amazon Prime, the kind of delivery service kind of system, which it is true. It's a consistent issue with trying to gauge how well Prime is doing within the video kind of
Mm.
streaming service, but like onto your point, net worth, like Netflix is worth 168 billion, but like Apple is 2,665 billion. Like,
Yeah, I had to work out what 2.9 billion was or trillion was. So these are all listed in billions, and you can see that there's a whole extra digit needed for Apple and Amazon. That's kind of that's one of the reasons why Apple and Amazon have been able to approach things differently to Netflix. And it's why they've been able to learn from Netflix and up to a certain point, Disney Plus and HBO Max now. They can watch others make mistakes. And the other thing to be very clear here, Paul, to get it out of the way, if Apple or Amazon or any of those wanted to become the number one streamer overnight, they could quite literally just go and buy Netflix.
yeah,
They
like
could buy all of Disney for crying out loud. Because remember, this is not the services. That's why the logo's changed here,
yeah.
people. This is the company. So all of Disney is net worth at about 150 billion, whereas Amazon is
One
10 times that.
it's 146 one 14,016 billion. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. It's crazy.
Um, but yeah, no, as you said, yeah, it'll be easy enough for this company, for Apple as a whole, to kind of like eat up the chunk change of a couple of other
Mm.
ones, kind of thing. So like that's why you need to kind of, so that's where they're coming from. The fact is that Netflix's business model is entirely on the streaming service and creation of content, and also their back catalog. Apple is in massive amounts of data, like devices. So like the streaming service is only a small part of that kind of connection. Like, so when we look at the revenue of each of those streaming services within 2022, you kind of see another number which is like, yeah, so TV, Apple TV Plus is not making as much as the other kind of boys and stuff like that, in the playground. But that's fine, because the fact is that, as you said, they get to learn from the mistakes of others and be able to put money kind of where it should be, which is in kinds of content and everything. So like, this is like, and also you have to also consider Disney Prime, or sorry, Disney Plus, Disney Prime. That'll be a good mix. Disney Plus, which is, their revenue is not only based on what we would consider more adult content. Like, you have to think of Netflix, Apple TV, and Prime Video kind of targeting older audiences a lot more, whereas Disney has a wide audience kind of range, because obviously they also own a massive amount of, like, which is content provider. So like, like the Hulu in America is now Star here, which is obviously Disney, Marvel, like
Fox, Marvel, Lucasfilm,
yeah,
Pixar, you name it. But like you're saying, also they have big the blue ribbon names in youth entertainment, let's call it. So they have got kids TV locked up if they need to. Um, so it's weird. The thing about the revenue that really strikes me is Netflix has been around so long. You would expect them to be making more a year with their more subscribers. But when we start looking at how much people have been spending over the years, you'll see that there's some discrepancies here that don't quite match up. And Paul, do you have the final image that kind of has a quick summary that I sent, the fourth
yes,
one?
yeah.
Because that is the
So
one
that's
that
fine.
makes me kind of go, Netflix they're massive when it comes to the number of subscribers, and they have way more yearly revenue. But because Apple is so big, and as a company is so big, none of those other numbers matter to how Apple will approach this versus how Netflix approach this. Netflix live and die by whether or not their service does well. Apple TV Plus as a division will live and die but they can take a much more long-term view. They can try and set themselves apart. They can try and be different. They can cater to different audiences. They essentially can try and do everything that Netflix did back when they were growing, but have the financial backing to be patient and make that. Netflix has been around for years and years. So Apple have time to wait and make those years happen for themselves. Whereas a Disney Plus or a HBO Max or some of these Paramount people, they're all running as fast as they can. I think that's the one thing that sets Apple and Amazon, but particularly Apple, apart, is that they have not just financial security, but the financial security that allows them to be patient and see how their decisions play out. Whereas everybody else is living minute to minute, stat to stat, viewership, retention, and completion rates. Uh, they release something on a Friday and they can be panicking by a Monday. Whereas I think Apple can release something on a Friday and check it out next year and see how it did in the last 12 months.
Yeah, they can take a lot more of a clinical approach to these kind of things, where they're gonna go like, oh, we'll try this. It kind of didn't work, but we'll continue
Yeah.
on and see how far this kind of like what it happens with it and stuff. I saw in the chat there, pop culture also said that Apple Plus has a huge kids section. It does. See, the thing is that the majority of these streaming services do have massive kids kind of sections. It's because also kids section kind of things are also cheap um, in the guise of kind of distribution. And also, there's not a lot of like exclusivity rights towards kid shows unless you are the one who made it. So that's another interesting fact there. There is also a
Yeah.
show that I also have a lot more kind of detail on it, but like you also have to play the card of Disney's also had in the last over the last year and a half or year or like year that it's had some dents with certain um audience members, which is because of certain political views and stuff like that. So Disney has also gotten a dent of its wider kind of audience kind of thing. So you also kind of
Good
take that
point.
into account of the fact is that although Disney Plus's main account is kind of a wider spread, you might now have over the last year people moving to the other services with their kids in mind because of certain kind of ideal political views. So that's another kind of aspect of Apple's kids viewership or young youth kind of viewership going up, like with some of the other ones and so, but their main focus is essentially on adult content, kind of thing. That's why we also didn't include HBO too much in this. In this, they are entirely pretty much like it's very small. Um, but yeah, so another one of those things is so we talked about how Apple as an entity is 15 times the size of Netflix. Apple Plus, or Apple TV Plus, is quite smaller. The interesting thing is in 2023. So this is taken from a Vanity Fair article, which is the 2023 spending forecast for the original content. Okay, Netflix is 7.6 billion. Apple is which is 4.7. That's not a massive gap there compared
No, you're
to,
talking 60%.
yeah, compared to what the size of Apple is to Netflix. Like that's a big thing there. Um, so like that's just shows kind of where their money's been spent on, and the sense that they're like you can do as much as you can with Netflix kind of like original content budget, but we all know what the level of their content is. Like it's a
Yeah.
very scattered gun kind of approach to things, which isn't the worst case scenario. A lot of things have come out of that kind of mentality, but Apple decided to take a more focused kind of a view on what their original content is and how they play with it and stuff like that. So we'll move on to some of the shows, just kind of.
Yep. Go for it.
But this number essentially shows that like although Netflix is quite large compared to Apple Plus TV, the way that they're going about kind of spending for original content doesn't seem to be that different, kind of thing. So we're gonna go on to a couple of which is Netflix shows, which is to kind of show, I guess, level like it's I guess going back to a time of kind of like Altered Carbon. Um, that was a show that first originally hit our kind of our screens, which was and had like a very mixed approach, but also became quite a lot of quite a large amount of like love, and even into the second season and third season, so which was a lot of love there, kind of. So, but it's a sci-fi show. It's a very difficult concept to come out on a screen and stuff like that, because this is originally a book, but they did it, and like they did it really well. And this kind of set the stage for a lot of other stuff. One of the other items that are kind of things, um, is which is Lost in Space. That's another
Oh
sci-fi.
yeah, I'd forgotten that even existed.
Yeah, Lost in Space. First season came out. I watched the entire thing. Started slowing down by the third season and stuff like that. But they took a chance. They became very quickly known as the sci-fi and fantasy kind of horror channel. You know, kind of, or a streaming service with Stranger Things and stuff like that. Like, and this isn't also to just kind of their more kind of fantasy stuff. You know, they also became more in tune with their animation stuff quite well. Like, you know, animation studios were biting at the bit to work with Netflix with Castlevania
It's true.
and stuff, which was also like famously like that came out like a year, 2 years ago. Arcane, which was the League of Legends show. So like this is the thing is Netflix started building a great reputation about really good content that they took a chance on, kind of thing, and then stuck with it, even though like the emerging numbers weren't so great. Okay,
Mm.
now emerging numbers, that's a key thing that we're going to be talking about soon, which is, but we've now got shows that are going downhill. So not to pick on Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything like that, but Fubar, like this is the kind of level of shows that we're getting now, which is like, you know, there it's a streaming show. Like it's
Yeah, and you just I knew one of us was going to use that phrase eventually, a streaming show. That's, a lot of people say, well, without Netflix, you wouldn't have streaming. Netflix popularized streaming. Yeah, and Netflix also popularized kind of the water cooler streaming show, Orange is the New Black, House of Cards, Stranger Things, whatever it might be. And they really did, they upped the idea of what a big runaway. You have to get Netflix because it's going to have the hot new properties. They became HBO all into themselves. You have other channels and other people who managed to do things like famously Breaking Bad with AMC, but Netflix was doing it. Like you say, they were taking chances for a long time. And Netflix, I think, and the reason we can now say the word streaming shows is because Netflix had hits, and that was what they did. It's like a sports team. They had a move. They played the long ball or whatever it is in soccer, and all of a sudden they started scoring goals. So after that, anytime they got something they wanted, if they kicked a long ball, they expected it to be a goal. So they were like, right, we're going to throw stuff out there and we're going to take chances. But if it's not a hit, if we don't get our water cooler moment, if we don't get trending on Twitter, I don't know. They got scared and then shifted to this. Well, maybe what we need to do is kick even more long balls as fast as we can. We can create streaming level content. We can get Ryan Reynolds and Adam Sandler and everybody else. We can start creating things that look like they're higher end, but they're actually still aimed streaming only. So they'll be good enough. They'll get enough views really quickly. They're not going to go down in history as great stuff. Because when someone says a streaming show, that's usually what they mean. It's not
yeah,
terrible, but you wouldn't have, it's not going to be your Game of Thrones. It's not going to be your traditional, even for Netflix, Stranger Things. They're not looking for their big wows as much. They're saying, actually, we're going to now play a numbers game. Let's get as much out, get it watched, get to the next thing. Let's always have something new on our tiles so that when somebody comes next week, they can watch something new this Friday, something new, something new, something new. And that doesn't build fan bases because that means you don't get second seasons, third seasons, fourth seasons, particularly those last two.
yeah,
Third seasons are, fourth seasons are really rare. And in the last number of years, fifth seasons are unheard of.
yeah. Like that's the thing.
So
And
Fubar is it, Paul,
yeah,
because it actually describes what they've done to their own model.
this is the thing is, yeah, because pop culture even said it. Netflix equals producing a lot for fast consumption. The thing is that that's a good model if like the consumption rate is also quite high, you know? So like, but it isn't. That's the thing is. The problem is that the production of the amazing shows that they're currently going out with is too high for any of these shows to succeed. The fact is that,
Yeah.
like I was saying it before we were talking about this, I watched like if you watched, I watched Cowboy Bebop. I watched it all the way up
Yeah.
to the end. Didn't watch the last episode. The only reason I didn't watch the last episode was because another show came out that I also wanted to watch. You know, so I started moving on to that, and then another show came out, and I started watching like moving on to that.
And you'd already heard that it was cancelled and there wouldn't be more Cowboy Bebop at
Yeah,
that stage, which is, that's demoralizing for people who are getting into things.
yeah, and the thing is that like you can't assume. So like one of the biggest numbers that they look at in Netflix is completion rate, the amount of people that have watched the show and completed it. The fact is that when you have 40 shows coming out, you know, in a few months around your show, you can't use that as a really powerful metric, because the fact is that you're essentially creating binge watchable TV with 50 other binge watchable shows, and then you're wondering why all 50 are being essentially not completed. You know, that's
Yeah.
a big factor for Netflix, and the thing is that Netflix has become known for the high producer for high consumption. That's not what they were known for back in the day. They took
Exactly.
chances. They trusted things. That's how we got That's how we got Stranger Things. That's how we got Orange Is the New Black. You know, they took chances on shows. They stuck with them. You know.
Well, the old investment adage or idiom of buy low, sell high. Well, they went from buy low, sell high to buy medium, sell medium. That doesn't work. It's just they've trapped themselves in their own stasis. They're now in this kind of permanent quicksand they're running uphill on, hoping for something to grab, take massive hold, and pull them to the next level. And that's where, when I'm looking forward to getting to talk about Apple TV Plus in a minute, that their change in direction is significant. Paul, we've got a couple of minutes before the ads. It's just one thing I wanted to really quickly do, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go for it.
Just a quick scatter blast of names of cancelled shows in the first season by Netflix. So Space Force had one show, Resident Evil one season, 1899, very popular, one season, Lockwood and Co., The Chair, Blockbuster, Uncoupled, Midnight Club, Girl Boss, Cowboy Bebop, Cursed, Jupiter's Legacy, which we both watched, and it had set up a thing that was never to come to pass. Away, The Get Down, Dark Crystal. I'm actually, the list just goes on too far. We don't have enough time. But cancellation after one season really is the thing that signaled to me, oh, Netflix aren't being judicious about what they're doing, because you don't create big runaway phenomenons with one season. You have to let things build.
Yeah, I agree that. So the only thing about one season is like you can have a runaway kind of item that hits really well with one season. You know, they're rare, but the thing is that
Exactly.
they happen and stuff like that. But the thing is that you also like, not only the problem with those cancellations was not the fact, like, I finished Lockwood and Co. and I read an article that was 2 months old. Like, I watched Lockwood and Co. when it came out, and I watched I read an article 2 months earlier that said Lockwood and Co. were cancelled. Like, that's not how a season works. Like, they released
No,
the season and had already planned to cancel Lockwood and Co. That was a great show, but they never had the chance. You
they're
know.
burning people's fingers by doing things like that. They really are.
So like
But
that's the issue, is that essentially they cancelled the shows before they've given it the proper chance, kind of thing. So, but yeah, so
yeah,
we've got an advertisement. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about the mixtures of Netflix and Apple TV, which could stick around. We will be back in a couple of seconds.
you obviously like two people talking about movies, or you wouldn't even be seeing this ad. Well, don't tell anyone. But Hear Us Out isn't the only choice. You should check out our friends over at It Takes Two podcast. It's a podcast where two people take two films with the same plot or premise, watch it and discuss them. Films like Gremlins and Critters, or The Truman Show on EdTV. Lisa and Nick don't stop there though. They get creative and compare some unexpected movies. Some that you don't see the connection until you realise that they can be described in the same way. They launch new episodes every second Tuesday, or Monday if you're in New Zealand. Find them on your favourite podcast service, or check the link in our description down below. That's It Takes Two Podcast. Tell them Here's Out sent you.
Hey, thank you very much. That was It Takes Two, friends of the show. They take two movies, which similar plots, but not in the way that you may have seen before or kind of guessed before, and they compare the two, which is great. So give them a chance on all your podcasting places. Which is before we get back into our Netflix and Apple TV, which is kind of comparison and how Apple TV we think is becoming the new Netflix. Let's read through some of the comments there, which is we've read a couple of few pop cultures, which is Brew just came out with a couple during the break. Netflix do quit shows too quickly, yeah, that's the problem. Like, it's like they have a very critical focus group watching and providing feedback. So we'll get into their main metric kind of thing of what they kind of look at. We've already said it. It's essentially the completion rate, kind of thing.
And they've also, and actually, Brian, you called out one more thing, or they're using social media to gauge opinion. Never do that. That is apparently in the corridors of power in Netflix, something that is measured and watched. They do want to see if they've hit trending. And if they don't, it's considered a black mark. And it's one of those things that they will remember. It's like everything else. Your day one, your first game, your first song, the first whatever it might be, that opening like blast, your opening weekend, that is something that the Netflix. It's not a focus group. It's a big bunch of people in suits who want to make sure that they can keep buying big nice houses, and those people are very easily scared by the numbers, Paul, you're going to be going through, the idea of completion rate, but also just indicators that they've learned. And when I say learned erroneously over the years to rely on. Why isn't this our Stranger Things? They're they compare every mountain to Everest, so every mountain looks smaller.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is at some point, you got to let your mountain grow, and you'll never know. Maybe it'll be the tallest in the world at some stage. Weird analogy that went wrong because mountains don't grow, but I think you all knew where I was going before
They do
I
grow.
went
They
off the
grow
rails.
incredibly slowly on a geological scale, but
It's true, actually. It's true.
But yeah, so the numbers that we're kind of looking at when we look at shows. So this is kind of a mixture of streaming service, which good metrics, and also broadcasting network, kind of thing. So you're looking at essentially your release reviews, your release views. Okay, so when you release a show, you get your ratings essentially. Everybody kind of heard of that kind of thing. That's your view rating, which is of how many people's eyes were on the show. Very much like actually our YouTube kind of metrics that we get. You know, concurrent viewers, how many views, how long did they get? You get a lot more data nowadays than you would have back in the day, kind of thing.
Oh, for sure.
These are all kind of combined together into a big, huge mixture of kind of like how popular show is. Okay. The thing with and then there's this new kind of rate, this new completion rate, which is now becoming quite popular within Netflix and a couple of other the streaming services. The thing is though, completion rates are all well and good if you spread your content out over a large period of time and you also give it a certain amount of leeway of how much time that is. At a bingeable format, completion rates don't work that well because
Yeah.
like there's only so many hours in the day that I can actually watch one show. There's a lot of shows I've been able to watch all the way through in one day, you know, but that's like the number of those. I shouldn't have said so many. There isn't that many, which is of those bingeable watchable shows that I'm able to just sit down on a Saturday morning and finish on a Saturday night, you know, kind of thing. So what happens is you end up watching it, you oversaturate yourself in a bingeable watchable show. You're going to go back to it a couple of weeks later as you kind of fill up on the other genres and other content so that you can go back to it. By that time, Netflix has already looked at their completion rate and already decided that it's a cancelable show. You know, it's already another black mark. We were pointing out that certain shows, Foundation's first half of their first season, which is an Apple TV show, which was
Yeah.
it is like its first half of the season did not do great. It is a beautiful show. Its first episode did really well, which is but The first half of the season didn't do that well. It started building back up on the later halves, and then in season two, it's now becoming quite popular, quite big. The reason for this is very clear. Foundation is based off an Asimov book. It is very little to do with the book. You know, there's
Yeah,
essentially the main
it's like
core.
sci-fi royalty. There's very few things that are in the kind of the Mount Rushmore of sci-fi from a literary point of view, and Foundation is it's up there. So of course there were going to be some ruffled feathers at having a different take on things. But because it's Apple TV, you know that they can go, hey, well, hang with us, because we'll stick with you if you stick with us. We're putting the money up on screen. And like I say, Paul, where you're going with this is this can't work on Netflix, but this is the genius of Apple TV right now.
Yeah, they trusted the show. You know, I'm an avid.
Exactly.
I've read the entire Asimov Foundation series from the prequels to the later to the entire actual main core series. I watched the first episode. I was just like, okay, they it looks beautiful. They're looking like they're going through this kind of thing. Hit the second episode, it went completely off the road, kind of thing, and I stopped watching. The thing is, uh, the thing is that eventually I heard that it was coming to a second season. I was very slow in watching the Foundation. I heard that it was getting a second season finally, and I kind of also came to the conclusion that I shouldn't be overly judging essentially a book series that is spread over like a few thousand years.
Yeah,
To turn it into a TV show is a very difficult ask for me. The first
it's
book
true.
essentially spans 1,000 years. Like, that's very difficult to put through a lot of stories. So I gave it another chance in the sense that I decided to go in not like loving the book, knowing that this was coming from it, and I love the show now. I've watched every single episode. I'm completely up to speed. I can't wait for the episode that's coming out next. Like, but this is the thing: is if Apple had followed the Netflix formula, this show would already be cancelled. You know?
Yeah. And I can give you a real world, honest to goodness, this is all true. What I'm about to tell you is not exaggerated in any way. You started watching Foundation because I still had my I'll see if I ever get around to Apple. See what you thought of it. I remember after the first episode, we've had some of this discussion on air, but that's a while back now. And 2.5 weeks ago, I got a message from somebody unrelated to the show altogether. Somebody who said, "Oh yeah, I know you're into TV and stuff. Found this new thing on Apple. It's called Foundation. They have no history of sci-fi, no history of nothing. They're like, it's really good, and there's 2 seasons of it up there. You can watch the whole lot now. It's great." And I had that moment of wow. Like when did Foundation the first season come out? Like it's 2 years ago. It's a bit more because I think like
Yeah, it's
with their shooting schedule and stuff, I think it's like pretty much a 2 year gap, right?
yeah, it's about a year and a half, 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. There's a show that not only was I aware of and didn't watch, but now I've been made re-aware of because of a second season. And if I'm going to watch it, I'm not going to start at season two. I'm going to watch both seasons. It's going to be a thing where I already know I'm going in to get even more content. So it's a thing where I know I'm going to get even more when I think it's probably likely now that I go and take on Apple TV Plus and possibly drop. It might be Netflix is the one that hits the floor here. So like Foundation's a great example in so many directions that it was huge budget, huge hype, huge expectation, annoyed its core fan base, then stuck with itself and had faith in itself, and people had faith in it. And now all the buzz for season two is like, oh yeah, this is great. We're looking forward to many more years of Foundation because there's such a big story to tell.
Yep.
It is the exemplar of what we're talking about because there was a time when what we just said is what you could say about Netflix
Yeah.
before it started having its hit of the water cooler week. We're trending on Twitter. We've got the big hit. We're now the big name in town. Oh, we didn't get that. Forget about it. Forget about it. Scrap. Try again. Try with another 10. One of those might be the hit. I think Apple TV are out Netflixing Netflix.
Well, this is the thing. So, Foundation is a good example. Ted Lasso, one of the biggest comedy hits, and I don't know of a, or I can't think of a Netflix original comedy show. Um,
Notoriously rough. They're notoriously rough on their comms, their sitcoms, their comedies. They love a stand-up special and they love a reality TV show now because that's cheaper and one-off buys. And Netflix have very few things that are even considered comedy from a series point of view that they've supported for more than a season.
yeah, like this. The thing is, I don't think Ted Lasso is a very, very interesting kind of concept and plot. Like the fact is that it's an American football coach coming to England to do football or soccer to the American audience kind of thing. Like that's it's a very, and also the fact is that the main character is a unbelievable, like sickly nice kind of thing. Like he is so homely and nice, kind of thing, that everybody around him just changes to his, like, like to his way of thinking. Like that shouldn't have worked, but it is
No,
one of the best, sweetest shows I have ever seen. And the thing is that, like, Apple TV, like, this is a show that Netflix would have taken a chance on earlier on in their kind of like years, but now,
they would have
like,
killed it.
they would have killed it after the first season. And this is a water cooling moment. But the fact is that they
Yeah.
haven't, like, this is a water cooler moment. Foundation is becoming a water cooler moment. Like this, like, but Apple aren't chasing it. They're still sticking with what they're doing. They're still focusing on good quality shows, which is, I see that MGTV has joined us. Hey, is it going? Apple has the budget and is trying to become the next HBO.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
thing
what I
is,
was saying earlier.
but
Exactly.
that's the thing is, Apple TV Plus doesn't have the budget. It doesn't
Yeah.
have as big of a
Themselves, they
budget.
don't. That's true.
Yeah, Apple TV Plus as the subsidiary company doesn't actually have the budget of Netflix. Netflix has, like we already pointed out, Netflix has 3.4 billion more in their original content budget than Apple TV. Yet I am actually considering getting rid of Netflix and going for, like, just for to continue on with Apple TV. You know?
Me too. I'm considering making a switch. And Paul, Ted Lasso, perfect example when you pair it with the morning show for me. This is Apple TV Plus incarnate. You could have something like Ted Lasso that is highly unlikely to be the hit that it was. And then you've got the morning show, which is Jennifer Aniston. It's what they were using in all their Apple TV Plus advertising. This is the show we think will be our Stranger Things. This is what's going to be one of our big hits. This is really going to bring in the viewers because one way or another, folks, there's no denying it. Apple TV Plus does love a big star. They love them a Tom Hanks. They love having an Idris Elba. If you can get stars in it, it's one of the reasons that creatives come along, and they've have a long history of getting top tier creatives. You know, your Spielbergs, your Abrams, your Coppola's, all the people that work with Apple TV Plus. But Ted Lasso took off. The morning show hasn't taken off. So they didn't just go, oh, we had our winner. We're back in it. God, didn't we get lucky with Ted Lasso? They actually simultaneously went, and the morning show doesn't deserve to be cancelled. We'll stick with it and see how it works. And they are sticking with it. Whereas Netflix, like you say, would never have had the patience for Ted Lasso right now, or Lasso. And they certainly wouldn't have been able to put their hopes and dreams into a morning show, the morning show, and have it not meet their expectations. So there's two shows that would have been cancelled by Netflix that are actually nicely backboning Apple along the way.
Well, this is another one. So just to get onto the morning show, which is the problem with Jon Stewart. Okay, it's a talk show. It's a
Mm-hmm.
so it's a current events kind of show. Netflix have tried to do that several times as well, but the thing is that you can't do that in a binge watchable format. The problem with
Yeah.
Jon Stewart comes out every week, whereas the fact is that, like, a lot of the other bingeable kind of current event shows are all done in a batch, kind of thing, and they're done more for comedic value than they are to do with actually kind of like a good mixture. The problem with Jon Stewart follows the coattails of which goes This Week Tonight, which is the Daily Show, like those kind of elements of stuff. Like it's the fact is that the two formats that essentially Apple TV has gone with is um they are releasing things weekly, which is an old
Mhm.
broadcasting kind of element. And the second thing is that they're following certain traditions that have already been established. The fact is that if you're going to do a talk show, you're going to do a current event show, then it has to be done like it has to be done weekly. It cannot be done bingeable, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And you have to put in the numbers for it. Like the fact is the amount of English comedians I've seen, which was Jimmy Carr being one of the biggest ones, to do a current event show on Netflix. It's just been awful. Like, there's no point to it, kind of thing. But like Silo is another kind of sci-fi show that's been doing really really well on Apple TV. I watched the first episode, was not into it. Very much like Ascension, which is a three-part show, which was, but I'm back into it. I'm loving it. Like I have to say that the majority of Severance, the
Oh, Severance. Yeah,
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 like that was a big sci-fi show that was on it. Like talking about the star power, Idris Elba and Hijack,
yeah.
like which has also gotten a like um Blackbird I've seen as a resurgence as well. Like these are all shows that are just getting massive amounts of kind of notoriety, but like way past essentially their Netflix sale by date, if I was to put it,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I think that Netflix sell by date's a great way of putting it because there is a shelf life in Netflix, and Apple TV isn't approaching things as having an expiration date already stamped on them. And that's what Netflix used to do. Netflix used to say, we are making content for ourselves. We hope it'll take off. If it doesn't, it's content that we have. Whereas they've spun around and it's already been covered by us. And I think Pop Culture made the comment perfectly that Netflix is a lot of it quickly. Apple is quality slowly. Apple are aiming at the HBO. We want to be making these quality things. If they don't hugely take off, at least we'll have quality content that as people find it over time. In fact, if anything, Paul, and you brought up the difference between streaming and broadcast a second ago with the idea of bingeable and not, Netflix are doing binge watching, they're doing streaming, but they keep trying to play by, you know, to go towards this broadcasting way of thinking of is it successful, is it whatever, but they're not applying the broadcasting timelines. Whereas the likes of it, even Disney Plus, which are releasing things weekly, they're going down their number trail by saying, okay, we have 6 episode show that's going to take 6 weeks to be out there. That's 6 weeks of time to decide, time to see what's going on. Netflix, they're like, we have a 6 episode thing. We have to find out everything straight away. Well, that's crazy because if it was broadcast or even some of your other streaming competitors, you would have a month and a half to know did the first episode fail, but the second episode got such good word of mouth that it brought on twice as many people. Or, there was a brilliant twist halfway through the season, got everyone talking, brought them back in. Netflix, if it doesn't happen on the Friday night, it never gets to happen at all.
Yeah, like I know that everybody keeps going. See, a lot of people in the chat have been saying Netflix seems to be going for essentially that kind of scattergun, constantly producing kind of way. That shouldn't be an excuse anymore.
No.
Okay, one of the biggest things that we've had in the last decade is the boom within the streaming wars. The fact is that we have too many streaming services now, and if you're
Yeah.
not unique, then you're not worth my subscription anymore. And I mirror or echo a lot of other people. The fact is that Apple TV, I have several other places where I can get a massive backlog. In fact, Netflix is pretty much my backlog thing. I don't care about the original content that much anymore. You know, like it's just not good. Like the majority of it is just awful. You know,
And can
so
I can I call out the elephant in the room? Because it's already been mentioned in the chat. Apple have phones and an ecosystem. I'm not an Apple person. Just so you all know, I'm Android all the way. Not a fan of Apple as a company in so many different ways and so many things, but I will end up with their TV streaming service. Amazon You're getting that mixture over, you're getting Prime and getting Prime Video free with it, etc. There's a second string to a lot of boats, even Disney Plus. Because people go, oh, well, Disney Plus, it's all just, TV and entertainment and movies and stuff. It's not. Because of the MCU, because of Pixar, because of a few things, because of the Disney connection with the classics that runs through generations of a family, they have another layer on top. Netflix, unless you're around sending them DVDs in the post, Netflix is only Netflix. They don't have a second string to the bow. If they don't like really cop on to this idea, I actually think Netflix will be the first big casualty of the streaming wars. And a lot of people, including me, thought it would be something like a Peacock,
Yep.
but it's actually probably going to be Netflix, because the Netflix spiral that people used to laugh about, oh, so many things to watch, but I can't choose one. Now that's starting to annoy people more, because they're like, I don't want to choose one, because is that good enough for the limited amount of time I have? Whereas you go to something like an Apple TV Plus and you go, I know I should be watching Foundation. So if I haven't, I'll go back and watch it,
Yeah.
because quality will always win. Things like drugs are a good example. You can sell a very small quantity of stuff for a big, big price. If you have people hooked on it, if it's something that they're going, this is going to make me feel something in the time I have.
Yeah, like we live in a world. We've got other shows, which is other episodes that essentially talk about this, the explosion of the golden age of TV and movies. We now have a finite amount of time to watch all these things, because we got busier lives, busier everything, and stuff like that. You know, that means that the quality of shows that I want to fill with that time is quite high. You know, and I gotta say,
Yes.
the Netflix used to be that. Like I used to, the majority of those shows used to be Netflix, but now the majority of those shows are Apple TV, and Apple TV like is going toward is essentially following the old trend of Netflix, which is we're making good original content. That's the reason why you come to Apple TV Plus. You come for our original content. You don't come for our backlog. You come for our original good quality content. You know, I never asked, and it recently came out. I love the One Piece anime. Never asked for the fucking live action show. Netflix shouldn't have made it. I'm going to watch it, not because I think it's going to be good, but morbid curiosity. Death Note wasn't good. Like the Full Metal Alchemist shows weren't good. Like, this is specifically backed by Netflix as well, kind of thing. It shouldn't be. I didn't watch Foundation because I was morbidly curious about it. I haven't
Yeah.
watched Invasion, like Ted Lasso, which was Altered Carbon back in the day, Stranger Things. Never were these things I didn't not, anywhere in my head was I watching like those shows because I thought they were going to be bad. Cowboy Bebop, okay? I wasn't morbidly curious about that. I was going, how do you make that into a live action show? I want to see. I'm morbidly curious about One Piece in the sense that its main character is a person who stretches their arms like which is Fantastic Four's Reed Richards kind of thing, which has never been like done well on screen. It's never been done well on a
No.
live action thing, like never. So when your main character is that, and you've got a couple of other ones like that, I'm morbidly curious. It could be a good show. I'm a big fan of One Piece the anime, you know, but like,
And Paul, your passion is showing there, that you kind of, you don't want to be able to say that it's not hate watching, but if it's morbid curiosity, like you say, there's nothing positive to that you're going to see. If it's a car crash, and if so, how bad is the car crash going to be? That's not good business. That's not something that builds longevity. And let's face it, jokes that are made will stick to you eventually. Ask the Lada company when it comes to cars. People in Europe were making jokes about Lada for years. There was a whole category, the Lada jokes. It held them back. You cannot have people saying, oh, well, it's a streaming quality thing. It's on Netflix. Or, oh, Netflix, sure, I don't know if I'll start watching. I'll wait and see if it gets a second season. We've made those jokes. I don't know if I'll dive in yet. They might cancel it by the time I've watched the third episode. Those sorts of things, that stigma is sticking to them. And people are, general people, not just us, people are starting to say that whole, There are too many streaming services. I've got to cut down on my streaming services. What they're all frightened of is not gaining new subscribers. It's that they're worried about losing existing churn. They're all worried about it. They're all taking different approaches. Personally, I think Apple TV Plus are doing the smart thing and trying to build so that when they get there, they will have a reputation. Whereas Netflix had a reputation. It's a terrible thing to be able to say about any brand, but they have lost the one thing that it's very hard to regain. They've lost that brand equity of Netflix was the streaming service that had the things you wanted to watch.
Yeah.
Now they're a streaming service that makes streaming stuff.
Yeah. Like,
That's not good.
no, so the death of the middle budget movie was an upsetting thing to us. We don't get
Yes,
things
very.
like Bone Collector and stuff like that. But it feels like streaming services like Netflix has decided to inherit the cursed earth of this and decided to fill it with see the reason why we loved middle budget movies was the fact is that they couldn't play around with different things. They had to be just like, we have a small budget, so where can we make things good? And the majority of them were story. They made the story solid because story was free, you know.
Yes.
So like, but actors, budget, all that kind of stuff, they're expensive, so they put themselves into the story as much as possible. Netflix has decided, as I said, to inherit the middle ground budget movie and blow them up with massive budgets, and which would say that they're high budget and be just like, yeah,
Yeah.
we spent 100 million on this movie. It's gonna be good. It's which it's 600 grand.
So glad you picked 600 grand. Because I was just about to say, if 600 grand was as good as it wanted to be, it would have been in cinemas.
Yeah,
Netflix wouldn't have released that on their own. How damning a statement is it that Netflix would not release something on their own platform if it was that good? They would say, actually, this is cinema level good, not us level good. That's a crazy thing for a company to be able to honestly say about themselves or have us say about a company on their behalf. Whereas Apple, they can release Coda and win awards because they can say, well, actually, we're making things that you will then find on a service. Same thing with Disney. We're making things that you will then find on our service. Netflix has really diluted their brand equity by saying, well, we'll make it good enough for us. I,
like,
if a restaurant did that, you wouldn't eat there.
no, like, perfect. Like, I go to Paramount. I go for Paramount for Star Trek. I go for HBO for the HBO shows. I go to Apple TV now for the Apple TV original shows. I go to Disney for Star Wars, Marvel, for a whole host of things. Netflix, I used to go for their originals. I now go for their back catalog.
Yeah.
Like Amazon Prime, I go for Lord of the Rings. I go for loads of their original content. I'm going to streaming services because they're original content. Netflix, I'm going for its back catalog. That's becoming less of a problem or less of a thing for me because I have less time and I want quality
Yeah.
shows. I want to rewatch a lot of stuff. I got them on DVDs,
Yeah.
you know.
And that is, Paul, I think that's a note that we can say that's where the thesis here is Apple TV Plus the new Netflix? No, they're the new old Netflix. And that was a hell of a company.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that they're not, thankfully, they're not the new Netflix because the new Netflix, as they are now, is what we've been decrying for the last 40 minutes. They took the golden goose. They, took some great golden eggs. And then they just started scrambling everything for no good reason.
No. They
Panic.
Yep, pretty much. So, thanks for watching. Which should let us know down in the comments down below if which is you think that Apple TV Plus is the new Netflix, if they're following essentially the old Netflix trend. Let us know also what you specifically go to. If you have a certain amount of streaming services, tell us the main show that you're currently watching for those things, and I'll say that they're probably going to be more unique. Include Netflix on it, okay?
Yeah, please.
And I mean current shows. So the thing, like, go to your last watch thing on each of them and let us know. Because I'm going to tell you, pretty much the majority of mine, except for Netflix, are going to be original shows. And Netflix is going to be, I think it's It's Friends.
I'll give Netflix credit. There's a couple of documentaries, but everybody's competing with them on that level. So
Yeah.
nobody can own documentary.
No.
And I certainly don't go to Netflix for the thing that is pushing us on everyone, which is reality TV. I don't need 17 different dating shows.
No. They have some unique kind
I
of
thought that was your moment to go, you do.
yeah. Um, but anyway, thank you very much for watching. Wishes. I've been Paul,
And I've been Patrick.
and we've been here at Sight. Catch you next time. Like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, do all the doody doos. Bye.
Bye.